200 years ago today, July 5th, 1810, this man was born, P.T. Barnum, in this house right here. And it's amazing to believe that after all these years, we're still remembering him.
I lived in Bethel a lot of years, and when we purchased the house, or actually when we first came to look at the house, we had no clue that Barnum was born there.
My name is Patricia Rist, and I'm president of the Bethel Historical Society. Today we're going over to the birthday bash at the Municipal Center, and that begins at 6 o'clock. And it's going to be circus activities, jugglers, dancers, I believe there's flamethrowers, there are animals, there's ponies, and there'll of course be music, and at 8 o'clock there is a birthday cake coming that's 6 feet long, 4 feet high, and 3 feet wide, and it's a circus tent.
Oh boy, well look at small town America here, right here in Bethel. The town of 18,000, we got almost a couple thousand right here for this thrown together celebration on September 25th and 26th. We're going to have a parade which already has 26 units signed up in it, and a dedication of a statue to P.T. Barnum.
And of course, the open house here at the Barnum House, the Englishes were kind enough to open the house up. This is the second time they've done it for it.
We purchased the birthplace of P.T. Barnum in 1995. We loved the house. We loved it then. And at this point in time, when we purchased it, we wanted to make it older if we could. We started in this back section behind me here, which was built in 1790, and that's exactly what was there, tree trunks with bark on them when we took the sheetrock down. When we continued to the rest of the house, the front part, the larger portion, that had actually burned off from this older part, and this part here was the original, and that part they rebuilt. So that was probably 1840, 1850, they rebuilt that. And Mrs. Barnum stayed here till 1876 when she died.
My name is David Giswaldi. I'm the sculptor for the P.T. Barnum Monument Project. And we started this project about 2.5 years ago. And we began by making 3 small clay sketches, which were about 18 inches high. And the people of Bethel voted on their favorite design, which turned out to be this design here, with the hat held up high. I then began sculpting this model, and this model is exactly 1/3 size of the finished monument. The final sculpture, I decided to depict P.T. at about age 60. And the reason why we chose that age is because at age 25, I don't think people would really recognize him as P.T. Barnum, you know, when he left Bethel.
So around 1833, 1834, he left Bethel.
What did he do in Bethel before he left here?
Well, he worked in a general store. He ran the lottery. And of course, as a young boy, he went to school and he did his farm work. For a short time, he moved to Brooklyn, and he worked in a store in Brooklyn, and then he came back here and he continued businesses here in Bethel. And then after he and Charity Hallett married, the decision was made they were going to go to New York City, and he did.
And
that's when he bought, well, he would have been probably 23 or 24, and that's when he bought the American Museum, Scudder's American Museum in New York City. But if you take a look at what he did at the American Museum, it almost seemed to be a natural transition to go from the American Museum to the circus, but there was that long period of time between where he filled that space with other things that were really not entertainment related.
I knew a little bit about him, but really very little. So with his circus, I really learned that, I mean, he was a man who knew how to make a dollar. He could go into any enterprise and make a dollar. There was no issues about it. He started the circus. He came up with a mermaid and people dying to see. He made all kinds of money. He built enormous museums. There's just one issue associated with all that, that he continued to go broke. His museum burned down, his house burned down, part of this house burned down. Most of the things that he attained, that he lost. But he was a brilliant man overall.
I think early on he was a little bit of a huckster. But you know what? I think that he, as an individual, grew as the country grew. You know, if you go back to the 1830s, 1840s, America was a very rough and tumble place. You know, and people were finding their way. You know, and I think he came into that world. But as America grew as a society, I think P.T. Barnum also grew as a man.
P.T. Barnum, he was a man of his times, and he did own slaves. You know, we know his very first attraction was Joyce Heth, and of course she was advertised and promoted as being a 161-year-old wet nurse or nursemaid to P.T. Barnum. So he had his very first attraction was an enslaved woman. And
by the time you look at his life in the 1860s, 1870s, 1880s, he really was a man of society in that he really cared about society and was doing a lot of great things, had a lot of great causes, and I think that's why he became involved in politics.
And that's part of the human condition. The human condition is filled with irony and contradictions. And P.T. Barnum, not unlike others, perhaps he started off as a status symbol to own blacks or whatever. But later on he became anti-slavery. So there's no doubt about that. And of course for women's suffrage too.
Because it's believed now that his two museums burned down as a result of Southern sympathizers trying to get back at him for his anti-slavery stance, and the fact that he had things like John Brown's clothing on display at his American Museum and things like that. I mean, he took a very firm stance in regards to slavery. And when he entered the Connecticut legislature and then became mayor of Bridgeport, he did a lot of great things. You know, water projects, hospitals. He helped found universities. He did all those things. At age 60, I think he was at a great crossroads in his life, because it was just before he had founded the circus and became involved in the circus. And it was sort of like his second act of his life. You know, he had gone bankrupt, he had lost all his money. And people pretty much counted him out at that point. They thought he was finished. But, well, anybody that knew P.T. Barnum probably didn't believe that for a minute, but a lot of people did. And he went on to create a second act for himself, and that was to start the circus.
There's nobody who knows more about P.T. Barnum than Arthur Saxon.